Ladies and gents, it's cocking off time. I've had a brilliant weekend's fishing, a brilliant result too. I've actually fished the Staunton Harold 2-day event. Some really good anglers fishing this event, and obviously Staunton Harold is a brilliant venue, really popular venue as well. All throughout the summer, I've been fishing matches on this venue, varying degrees of success. Been doing all right with section money, but I've just finishing just out the frame on a lot of occasions. Having said that, everything's clicked into place. I've drew some amazing pegs this weekend. I've also caught a few fish. I've managed to win the event. Over the moon, because like I say, some brilliant anglers fishing these matches. Firstly, before we get into how I've fished the matches, I just want to say massive well done to the organisers. Obviously, with all this COVID troubles that we've got at the minute, it's really hard to get matches off the ground in a safe way. But we've had a drive-through draw. No one's touching anything. Everything's been done really, really well. And obviously Shane and Spud, who run the matches, a couple of helpers as well, but those two primarily who run the matches have done a fantastic job. So, thought I'd do a little video. Bit easier to get across a few details, as in kit and bait and tactics and things, rather than doing a big long Facebook post. Both days, I've fished pretty similarly. And actually, I've used the same kit for both days. So we'll talk about the kit first. First day I was on the Sailing Club bank. A little bit shallow really, peg 9 I was on. Shallow and a little bit snaggy. So chucking a little bit further, obviously is always going to get you a few extra fish when it's like that. And actually both days I've chucked 70 metres, which I'd say for Staunton regulars is not out of the ordinary. It's just a distance that I like to chuck. You know, I feel I can chuck that nice and comfortably and keep everything nice and tidy without going too far. But there's some Staunton guys, some Staunton regulars who'll be chucking 80 metres quite often, and obviously some guys as well, they like to chuck a little bit shorter and they feel it doesn't make any difference. But for chucking those sort of distances, firstly, let's look at the gear. High S feeder rod, Free Spirit. This is the special, 13-foot special. It's a superb rod. I just put the 2-ounce tip in it, and for me, you know, it's an absolute superb rod for chucking those distances. Braid on the reel. Now, something that I've messed around with this year and had really good success with is braid on the reel, and then you might be able to see there I've got a braid shock leader. I've got some 020 braid on, which breaks at about 30 odd pounds, so I'm never going to crack off, and it just means that I can give my cast, you know, some extra oomph, and I'm never going to crack off. It also means that the whole setup is ridiculously direct, because obviously when you're fishing at 70 metres, you want to be in control of what you're doing. You know, you want to tighten up quick, you want to see every little indication. And especially on the second day, yesterday, some of the indications from the skimmers were so tiny, it was unbelievable. Just little tiny rocks of the tip. And I don't think you'd have seen those if you had a mono shock leader, or definitely if you were fishing mono as a main line. So let's talk about the rig. Hopefully you can see that. Try and get it on my top there. Standard helicopter rig. Let's pull a bit of line off this so we can get a bit of, so we can see. So we've got a standard helicopter rig. I'll put a feeder on that for you as well. Float stop goes on the shocker, followed by a little quick link swivel. 2 more float stops, just probably you'd get away with 1 on mono, but just obviously the braid's a little bit slippier, so you want to put 2 on there. And that just means that I can move that up and alter the length of the drop. Your hook length will go on that little quick link, and then your feeder obviously clips on here. And I've started with, so there you go, I've started with a metre hook length both days. The water's really clear. Feel that you're getting quite a few bites just after the bait settled, or at least the fish are watching the bait settle. And so we're metre hook length and a drop there of about 6 inch. I think bigger the fish, the smaller the drop, and obviously the smaller the drop, the less tangles you're going to get, because the hook length hasn't got enough line to spin around that bit of drop. So for longer distances, I think 6 inch or less is about right. But the beauty of this helicopter rig is when you chuck out, obviously the freedom on that swivel means that your hook length can rotate around your main line. You're just going to get less tangles rather than a running rig. So for me, it's a running rig all the way up to sort of like 50 metres. But then after that, ideally, if allowed, I'd use that helicopter rig. So Feeder wise, now this is something I think has been really important over the 2 days. The differences that a different feeder can make has been massive. So a lot of people believe that when they're choosing their feeders, whether it's front loaded, I've got a selection here actually, the ones I've used, whether it's sort of like base lead like that or a rocket style or, you know, a window, it's all about the distance they want to cast. That's maybe true, but really for me and for a lot of good anglers as well, it's about what you want the bait to do once it comes out of that feeder. Once the feeder enters the water, it's how you want the bait to be released. And these 3 different feeders offer 3 different ways of releasing the bait, which again, really important. I think that's obviously a key to success of a lot of top anglers. So to start with, we've got a nice open there distance cage. You can see there wire, so the water can get to the bait really quickly. This is the feeder that I'll use when I want to attract fish into the swim. Obviously, even though these reservoirs are quite deep, some bait falling through the water creates a lot of cloud. Those fish aren't sitting on the bottom. They'll probably sit half depth and then dip down every now and again for a bit of a feed and drop back up to the depth they feel comfortable at. And just gathering some fish into the area is for me what these cage feeders are for. So a few quick casts on a cage feeder can help create a bit of cloud up in the water, pull fish into the area before maybe you chuck in a feeder that you've rammed a little bit harder or a different style of feeder to catch them on the bottom. That's the idea for me for the cage feeder. And quite on a day where you're not getting many indications, cage feeder to get some fish into the swim is quite often the way to go. So nice distance cage feeder, that's 60 gram. So obviously I'm casting a long distance, so I need to be in control of what I'm doing. So 60 gram cage there, that's sort of like my starting feeder, just to get a bit of attraction in the peg. And then we've got, I'll go from one end of the scale to the other, we've got a window. This window, you can ram bait in, it sort of goes to the bottom like a bomb, but with some bait in, you can tighten up to it quick, and that is like the ultimate fish catching machine if there's fish in the swim already. Obviously it's not a very attractive way of pulling fish into the swim, but if you've got fish in the swim already, that goes to the bottom, all there is on the bottom, there's no cloud to confuse the fish, there's no other extra bait, there's basically your hook bait and that's it. And obviously he's got no choice but to pick up your hook bait and you'll catch him with a window. Then we've got the happy medium, which is a rocket. So the bait can't really get out the bottom that well, but it's got nice open sides. So this is in between that window and that cage. This is the feeder that I end up chucking a lot of the time at Staunton Harold. Obviously this is 44 gram. The wind has to be reasonably kind to chuck 70 metres with a 44 grammer, but quite often you get away with it. And that is a 5 square Nisa. Like I say, probably the feeder I chuck the most at Staunton Harold. Now bait wise, because I think people see a big expanse of water and they think I'm going to need loads of bait. For me, this weekend wasn't about loads of worms, loads of casters, anything like that, loads of particles. It was all about just ground bait, and neat ground bait really. Fed no particles in the ground bait whatsoever. Maybe the second day I fed a few little bits and bobs, but really it was neat ground bait. The ground bait mix I've used has been this. So this is the new silverfish. I wanted something that had got a bit of sweetness to it because there is quite a few smaller skimmers in Staunton and quite a few roach as well. And I didn't want to risk putting them off, so I wanted something with a little bit of sweetness in it. So gone for that. That's the new betaine green. It's probably one of the first few goes out of it, probably my third go out of it, but caught plenty of fish on it in the past. So I've gone for a bag of that and then half a bag of black swim stim just to darken it off a little bit. As I say, the water is gin clear and I just didn't want a really bright ground bait. You know, that can spook your fish, especially smaller fish. Bait on that metre hook length, double maggot, triple maggot, smaller baits, but obviously still quite visible in that clear water, but not the 3, 4, 5 maggots or big, you know, double dendrobinas that we were using maybe a month or so ago. But double maggot has been brilliant. Size 14 hooks, 0.14 hook lengths, just a scaled down version of what we were doing probably a month, 2 months ago. But as I say, 2 good pegs were over a grand richer. Really good weekend. I can't reiterate enough how important it has been for those match organisers to get things together. So again, Shane and Spud, well done. And until next time, tight lines.